So welcome everybody to Youngstown Studio here with our special guest, Julie McCullough. Julie, of course, you remember from Growing Pains, Golden Girls. She started in several other things, more recently Sharknado. But Julie's going to be at the Funny Farm Comedy Club on Thursday, February 13th. So Julie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I hope they can come down and watch the show live.
Yeah, absolutely. So Julie, talk to me about kind of when you decided to make stand-up such a focus in your career and what kind of led to that decision.
I started actually when I was very young. Used to go to the Improv Comedy Club in Los Angeles when I was young, and I used to take a class there. It was called Bill Hudnut's class. It was improv comedy, and it was full of comedians and people wanting to do situation comedies. And I branched more into the situation comedy route. And I also, in that group at the Improv, got together with a comedian magician, and I became a magician's assistant for a magic comedy act, and I toured with that for almost 17 years.
Mm,
And we did the old vaudeville circuit, but it was all comedy on stage and with magic.
mm,
And basically I was a box hopper, and I played all these different characters in it and that type of thing. And after a while, you just don't bounce back from the injuries so much, coming out of cutting in six boxes and box hopping out of trunks hanging from the ceiling and, and things like that. And I thought, I just can't do this physical comedy like this anymore. I just need to do this on my own.
mm,
And I had got offered a tour for Playboy, and it was in the early 2000s. And the comedy, it was a Playboy bunny tour. They were taking old clubs around the
mm,
United States, and were doing a 50 city tour of the US as
mm,
bunnies, basically dressing up in the bunny costume, taking pictures with people, and they were setting it up like it was a retro 1950s bunny club. And
mm,
I was the announcer in that, and basically made up nicknames for all the bunnies, introducing them. And all the playmates started calling me the funny bunny because I basically made it like a comedy hour for me. I was having to
mm,
introduce the girls, thank the sponsors in each city and each place that we went to. And as a result, I got back from that tour and doing a 50 city tour and started going to the comedy clubs, seeing a lot of the comedians that I started out in the business with. And I hadn't been acting in a while at that point.
mm,
And some comedian friends were like, "Get up, funny bunny, tell a joke and introduce my show." And
mm.
so I did. And here I am 20 plus years later and doing stand up full time. And that was it. And that was kind of how the kickoff went. But I actually started very young at 21.
I gotcha. So, I mean, now, did you have any kind of mentors in the stand-up world, or are there any kind of comedians that you draw inspiration from, and specifically, kind of when you kind of came back and this became more of your full-time gig?
No, not really. I mean, I'd worked with so many comedians. They were kind of
Mhm.
more my peers at that point. A lot of us had gone into
Yeah.
doing TV sitcom stuff. I'd been on the Drew Carey show. I love Drew Carey, and
Mm,
an Ohio guy. And
mhm,
on the Drew Carey show, I played his hillbilly redneck neighbor Peaches in the very first season, which was awesome for me because I didn't have to lose my accent. And a lot of
mhm,
people don't realize that, but I have an accent. I'm Southern.
mhm,
And I actually currently live in West by God, Virginia, and
mhm,
so I'm not too far. And my dad was a coal miner. I'm a coal miner's daughter, and then
mhm,
I went to school and finished school down in Texas. My family moved around a lot, so I basically just wound up coming home to West Virginia, and this is where I decided I wanted to retire.
mhm,
Of course, I didn't really retire,
mhm,
but this is where I bought a home here, and this is where I wanted to be. So
mhm,
on Drew Carey show, I got to actually be myself. I
mhm.
was playing a hillbilly. I was like, "Ooh, I fit right in," And so I think, when I went back to doing stand up and comedy, a lot of my friends were all doing shows like Drew.
So, talk to me a little bit about your stand-up set and kind of what sort of things you incorporate into your act. I mean, I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's things you cover from your day-to-day life and stuff now, but I mean, do you incorporate stuff from your past as far as being a model and being an actress? And is it just kind of a big conglomeration of everything that you've been through in your life?
Absolutely. I've coined this nickname, the Funny Bunny, and basically it's because I'm making fun of the fact that I had been a Playboy bunny,
Mhm,
and I was on a couple shows. I was on Scott Baio's 45 and Single because I used to date him when I was young,
mhm,
and he came to do see me doing stand up. And then I was on the Girls Next Door show, which was Hef's show, and Hef came to watch me doing stand up. And I was really worried about him with me making fun of his company and making
mhm.
fun of the fact that I'm a bunny. I didn't know how he was going to take that. And he was fine. He was
Mhm,
actually so happy that I was doing it. And there was no other playmates at the time doing it. Now there's a couple more playmates doing comedy, but at the time, no. So I make fun of that a lot. Talk a little bit about my TV stuff and talk about day-to-day stuff.
mhm. Kinda going back to your to your modeling days and through Playboy, I mean, what was that experience like for you? I mean, what were some of the good, the bad? Just, I mean, what was your kinda big takeaways from all that?
Oh gosh, so many.
Mhm,
I I think when you're young, like everybody thinks you're all, you're just the pretty girl, and so for doing film and TV, I was always getting cast as the pretty girl, the girl next door.
mhm,
On the Golden Girls, I played Mary. I was their next door neighbor who got knocked up, and my daddy kicked me out because I was knocked up, and the Golden Girls took me in until
mhm,
they tried to help reunite me and my daddy. And then Drew Carey, like I was playing his hillbilly neighbor who was always hitting on Drew that first season. I was always being cast as playing a pretty girl. So when I got older, those roles dry up pretty fast, and
mhm,
you have to go with to go with change. And so I started now, I do mostly Christian and faith films, and I started doing a Christian faith film television miniseries that's been running on JC channels, JC Films. It's called JC Plus Films. It's a new
mhm,
channel. It's kind of like Tubi. It's free, but kind of like Pure Flex, where it's Christian, but it's a free channel.
mhm,
And so I've been doing a lot of movies on that in the last couple years. And now I'm playing outright characters. So now I just basically play batty old ladies and you know um, the crazy people. So I've kind of just evolved, I guess,
mhm,
into playing more, fun characters than I used to play when I was younger. But now mostly in family and faith films.
mhm. What are some of your fondest memories from working on Growing Pains?
Oh gosh. Um, the cast of Just the 10 of Us was right next door, and I really loved them. It was all girls,
Mhm,
and I'm still friends to this day with a lot of that cast. So hanging out with them, hanging out with a girl on Growing Pains who answered the phone. She was the daughter of one of the producers, and I'm still friends with her. I'm still friends with so many of those people. Jeremy Miller, who was the little boy on the show,
mhm,
and Tracy Gold, who was the girl on the show, they're still two of my really good friends, and I do a lot of autograph type convention stuff with
mhm,
them. So been getting to see them over the years, and that's been nice. Alan Thicke, I was very close to Alan, and
mhm.
unfortunately Alan passed away. And Joanna, she's a director now, so she's doing fantastic, which is great because there's not a lot of female directors out there.
Mhm. So Alan Thicke, I had the chance to interview him a few times over the
You
years, and he's
did?
just
I love
tremendously
Alan.
what a nice guy and what an awesome interview he always was. He was so self-deprecating. It was always so funny talking to him.
Yes.
Do you have any
I
good Alan Thicke stories?
Yes. So Julie McCullough, the star of Growing Pains. That's my imitation of him. That's how he would introduce me all the time to people. He would always call me star, and it was like, yeah, right. But he was so self-deprecating
Mhm,
in his own humor. He became, I don't know, just such a character in his life. He had that perfect tan, he had that perfect coiffed hair. His voice, and he had this rhythm to his voice. When he would talk to you, he was
mhm,
always very one step ahead of his
mhm,
thoughts. I loved Alan. Alan was just hilarious. Alan was just a nice dude. He was a good
Mhm.
dude.
It's funny too, that what I was fascinated about him too is he wrote a lot of the theme songs for a lot of those shows
Yes.
back in the day. So all these
That
iconic
spectacular.
theme
People
songs.
don't know that.
Yeah.
He wrote so many sitcom songs. Him
Mhm.
and his ex-wife, they wrote so much music. So naturally, his one son is a musician. I mean, that kid gets
Mhm.
it honestly. It's
Right.
like both his parents wrote all this music, and people don't realize that. And his brother, by the way, was the producer of America's Home Funniest Videos.
You mentioned this a little earlier as far as working, and this is a show that's near and dear to my wife and I's heart. We still watch the reruns all the time. Is Golden Girls? What was that experience like working on that show, and and working with such a legendary cast?
Oh, they're my favorite. That
Mhm.
I would still put the Golden Girls to this day in my life as my number one favorite show that I got to be on because
Mhm.
those actresses, how? I mean, come on. In my scenes with B. Arthur, I was sitting on a bed and I was sleeping in B's room on the show. And
Mhm.
so she's chatting with me on the bed in the scene, and I'm looking at her, and all I kept thinking was, and then there's Maud. Then there's
You're
Maud.
right.
Like it's in your head.
Right.
It's like from my childhood. And so that was really funny. And then Betty White. Okay, here's my story about and I wrote this in a book, by the way. The book hasn't come out, but there's this Golden Girls book that this girl wrote, and I wrote the foreword for the book about the
Mhm.
Golden Girls, and I included the story in it. But Betty, my very first day, I just to preface the background, I was an apartment manager. When I was
Mhm.
on Growing Pains, I was an apartment manager and I left Growing Pains, and Golden Girls was my like one of my first shows back after doing Growing Pains.
Mhm.
And I was still an apartment manager and I managed mostly apartments with elderly women. It was almost the whole building was full of older women. And one of the ladies had a fall that morning, and she managed to get to the phone to call me for help. And she lived next door. So I went over. She was bleeding pretty bad. I got her up. I could get her up, got her in my car. I had to take her to the hospital. And her blood was all over me. She just had a bad gash, and she was
Mhm.
okay. But I was covered in her blood because I was helping lift her and get her out. And got her to the hospital early, early in the morning, and she was fine, just to give everybody
Mhm.
in case they were asking and wondering.
Mhm.
And then I looked at myself, I'm like, I had to be on set on Golden Girls. It was my first day.
Mhm.
I zipped back to my place, changed out of that, put on a clean shirt, and then tried to get to the studio as fast as I could, and I'm late.
Mhm.
And I walk in, and it's my first day. And on the first day of any sitcom, they sit around a long table. Everybody's sitting around it, all the producers, all the writers, the cast, and they do a read through
Mhm.
in case the writers want to go back and rework something. Maybe they think it's not working. And before you block it out on a stage, you have to do a read through.
Mhm.
So I'm late, and I I'm running across a parking lot, which is like a football field worth, and
Mhm.
I'm running, get in there, I'm sweating, and I'm getting there, and I'm like, hi, and everybody, it was so quiet, you could have heard a pin drop. They all turned and looked at me, standing there, all of them, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh my god, am I gonna get fired? I haven't even started,
Mhm.
and they were so quiet, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm late. And I didn't even get the chance to explain why, because I had a legit reason
Yeah.
why.
Right.
And and I was carrying a real life Golden Girl to the hospital. But
Mhm.
no, I didn't even, I just said, I'm so sorry I'm late. Pin drop, pin drop, pin drop. Nothing's just quiet. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Betty White says, why, Mary, you're pregnant. So of course you're late. And everybody in the whole room busted up laughing. And it was like I just got anointed by the comedy queen and
Mhm.
saved. She saved me by making a joke of it. And
Mhm.
nobody ever said anything to me after that. Not, why were you late? Nobody
Yeah.
even asked. And so, and then somebody waved me over, and and I sat down in a chair, and then they patted me on the back like, "Yeah, you just got saved." you know, it was just like, I thought, what a cool woman. They didn't even ask, like, I
Mhm.
was like that, so I felt like I got anointed by some comedy goddess.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's an awesome story. What do you think it is, about shows like that, like Growing Pains and Golden Girls, and obviously you mentioned going to conventions and meeting with fans and stuff, and I mean you're hearing firsthand from all these fans of these old sitcoms. I mean, what do you think it is about that era and some of those shows that have just continued to resonate with people all these years later?
I think just because of the subject matters that they would conquer. They conquered so many arenas, um, from being gay to being pregnant, and teenage pregnancy, which was my storyline. Politics, because they
Mhm,
were all completely different in their own politics within the show. They were all different types of backgrounds, and because it covered such a big gamut, and divorced women, just different older women trying to survive. And I think that same storyline works
mhm,
now. The British do it all the time. They're always casting older people in their character roles, whereas American television really didn't cast a lot of older people as
mhm,
main characters, especially not women. There were some older male characters, if you look back in time, like Red Fox, did his Sanford and Son, and they had a lot of older characters on that show, and it was fabulous, and it worked for years. But
mhm,
they just didn't want to do that, especially through the 80s. There was 80s, and then into the 90s, it was all young. It was all
mhm,
young people on these shows. It was family sitcoms, but everybody was young. Everybody
mhm,
had professional jobs. Whereas in the 70s, 1970s was more, people were working class in the sitcoms, and in the 1980s and 1990s, it was all, people they were doctors or psychiatrists, or
mhm,
they were the head police chiefs, or there was always, but they were all a little more glamorous. Their homes were more glamorous, whereas in the 1970s they were living in apartments, and they were living,
mhm,
in the inner city. And whereas all the sitcoms of the 80s and 90s were more, they lived, in high end places. Of course, you had, uh, the family show, that Roseanne Barr did, where it was
mhm.
more normal. Like they had the Afghan on the back of the sofa,
Right.
that they had the plaid furniture that we all had growing up. It was just, that was more normal. And then they had it where, like, I guess you won a lot of money, and it kind of lost its way. It just did change the show. Um,
Mhm,
but that was the difference, I think, of with where Golden Girls was working, because
mhm,
Golden Girls, they were living together. They were four women who had pulled their incomes together in
mhm,
order to survive. And it's the same if you go into any big city, young people have to pull their income together in order to have
mhm,
these big city apartments they can't afford. Whereas Friends, everybody loved Friends, um, but they were all having, it's like they were in apartments that don't even exist in New York City unless you're a
mhm.
multimillionaire, of course,
Right.
the size of them. But, at least it was like a bunch of people living together in order to be able to pay rent.
Mhm,
Um, so I think that's where the Golden Girls hit the nail on the head for audiences. The Golden Girls were golden, and they
mhm,
were having to survive. And I I think and now it's like you get older, you're like you're on your limited budget, and you're thinking, gosh, I need to have the Golden Girls had it right.
mhm.
It still resonates, because in real life, people have to live together now in order to be able to pool their incomes.
Mhm. You mentioned being attending, sort of like fan fests and conventions and things like that. What have been some of the most memorable, I guess, fan exchanges that you've had over the years?
Well, we had a Golden Girls convention It was
Mm,
called Golden Con. That was really a lot of fun. And then we had another similar type one called Behind the Golden Curtain. That was out. The Golden Con was in Chicago, and the Behind the Golden Curtain was at the Orinda Theater in California, northern near San Fran. And both, I think, were more fun for me because people would come dressed up as the Golden Girls, so everything was focused on the Golden Girls.
mhm.
And um, they had the Golden Gays performing, singing, and dancing, and doing a show, and that was probably the most fun. Um, they had a contest where people were dressing up as characters up on the stage for that, and I thought, I'm going to get up there and I'm just going to go up as myself. So I got up, I put something underneath my top, and I went up like I was pregnant. And they're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Mary from the Golden Girls." It was just funny because everyone was dressing up as characters. So I'm like, I'll just go up as myself. That was hilarious. Anyway, I think the Chiller Convention's one of my favorites, and that's in New Jersey.
Mm,
And you get a wide variety of fans there. You get the sci-fi fans, and I've been in some sci-fi stuff and some horror stuff. I was in a small part in the Blob movie when they
mm,
remade the Blob back in the late 1980s, and it was in this thing called the Black Scorpion, which was kind of a fun TV show. It was similar to Batman, and they had a lot of the original cast from Batman, and most of my scenes in that were
mm,
with Adam West, which
mm.
was
Yeah.
oh, and in the scene, some of his dialogue, he had he tells me, you know, he calls me a supervillain
Mm,
because I'm a villain in the show. And it was like that Maud moment, then there's Maud, it's the same kind of moment. I was like, man just called me a supervillain. That's all I kept thinking. His character was called the Breathtaker in the Black Scorpion, and my character was called Pollutia. I was planning to
mm.
asphyxiate the city with my pollution, and that was my character. And he's teaching me and giving me the ingredients to asphyxiate the city. And when he called me a supervillain, that's all I kept thinking was, "Oh my
Mm.
God, I've made it! Batman just called me a supervillain. I officially made it." Um, so I would get a lot of those fans, because fans from the old Batman shows would show up, to meet me because I was in the Black Scorpion because it was
Mhm.
all original cast members a lot of times in the Black Scorpion from the original Batman.
Mm.
Um,
Like,
I was sitting with my best friend at one of the Chiller conventions, and her name is Tia Carrere, and she was in the
mhm.
Wayne's World movies.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we try to sit together when we're at these conventions, and people come dressed as Wayne and Garth and take pictures with her. Like, I thought that was awesome. I haven't had that experience yet. The closest I got was people dressing up as the Golden Girls taking pictures with me, but I thought that was fun. I don't know. Those conventions are fun. I like it.
Mm.
I like them. Do you
Awesome.
go to them?
Awesome. I've been to a few, yeah, and then on a like a lower level, there's like toy shows and things around here that sometimes will have different other celebrities. I think there's one coming up here in a couple of months where Donald Gibb, who is in Revenge of the Nerds and Bloodsport, is going to be at it, and there's a couple other and they'll have people from the wrestling world and in the '80s world and stuff and various stuff. Yeah, but yeah, they're always a lot of it's always a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I was in the Revenge of the Nerds TV pilot.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I think I'd heard you say that before. What did just it just didn't get picked up?
No, it didn't get picked up. It was made by Fox. It was their very first TV pilot, show
Okay.
that they did at the time because Fox was
Mhm.
still a new channel.
Yeah.
And they didn't run it, but apparently they tagged it at the end of when they released the Revenge of the Nerds movies. They
Mhm.
tagged that at the end of some of those DVDs. So some of the actors contacted me about it. I'm like, oh, that's cool, because
Mhm.
it had never been seen until then. I played Betty, the snot cheerleader,
Mhm.
and I was at a convention with the original Betty sitting right across from me. So I thought that was kind of funny. I went up to her and I'm like, "Hey, you played Betty in the movie. I played it in the pilot."
Nice. Do you remember who else was in that pilot, or and kind of what the original episode was sort of about? Was it just kind of like a rehash of kind of what the movie was?
Yes, Rob Stone was in it. He played one of the nerds,
Mhm,
and Lightfield Lewis was in it. He played one of the nerds. Um, uh, Robbie Rist, who was cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch, he
mhm,
was in it. Um, I think he played Booger character, and I can't remember now. But I'm still friends with a lot of that cast, which was kind
mhm,
of funny. Sean Kanan, who was in some of the Karate Kid movies, he was in it playing the snot football player guy.
mhm,
Um, it had this amazing Grant Gelt, who was in the Sandbox or the Sandlot movies,
mhm,
the
yeah,
Sandlot
mhm,
movies. So he's in it. He was a little boy in it, and Lightfield Lewis did a lot of backstage home videos that it's amazing the video footage he has. I was trying to give Grant Gelt a kiss when he was a little boy, like just to kiss him on the head, and he was
mhm.
running from me. And this backstage video that we have, and he's hiding under a picnic table on our set so that I couldn't kiss him. I was like, just wait till you grow up. When are you gonna wish you had that kid, right? I saw him. I ran into him for the first time at a convention and
Mhm,
at a sports convention when I was random when I was in New Jersey, and he's there, all
mhm,
grown up. Now he's like a dude. He's like all muscular and tattoos and lives in Nashville and like he's a dude. He's a
mhm,
big guy. So I was like, oh my God, we have to take a picture of me
mhm.
kissing you on the
Yeah.
cheek, you know? It was like after such and such many years, 30 plus years, I finally got to give Grant Gift a kiss.
Mhm. Nice. Well, Julie, as someone who's, has been sort of in and around all aspects of show business, I mean, what sort of advice would you give to somebody that's trying to break into show business today?
Wow, that's tough. I think even to, you know, because it's all different now. It's like it used to be you had to move to LA or you had to move to New York City. Now you don't have to run off and move to those cities. You can actually audition for things and send it in from your own
Mhm,
home. Um, Now, in the old days, you couldn't do that. Now it's all changed. And I'm not very good at it. A lot of us older actors, we are not good at self-taping stuff. I'm terrible at it. I'm still learning. It's still a learning curve for me. But for young people trying to get in, I think it's an easy thing for them. You just have to get somebody to submit you for these auditions. And
mhm,
you have to have an agent. That's key. But don't pay an agent. There's so many fake companies out there. They want you to pay money. They say, oh, there's these schools that, oh, you have to pay us, $5,000 and we'll give you headshots and we'll get you in. And it's all, that's all bogus. You don't have to do all of that. You can take a headshot now. A headshot is basically from here to here, and you can do that with your own phone now. So you don't have to have $5,000 worth of photography, which is absurd. And
mhm,
I started out by literally moving to Los Angeles, and I was modeling at the time, and I was with Wilhelmina modeling agency. I got an agent before I moved to LA. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved.
mhm,
Um, you have to have those things set in place before you just go and move out there because everything's spread out. You have to have a car. In New
mhm,
York City, you don't have to have a car. That's the plus thing about going to New York City, but you still have to be able to afford that kind of rent because, a matchbox on a postage stamp will cost you five
yeah,
grand these days, for a
mhm,
bathroom and a room and with a
mhm,
kitchenette, if
mhm,
it's even called a kitchenette, and that'll be 5 grand. It's like, here's your sign. Maybe you shouldn't be in La La
mhm,
Land or New York City,
mhm,
unless you can afford it. But
mhm,
um, you can do now auditions from your own home. It doesn't matter. You can live in Iowa, you can live in Ohio, you can live in Kentucky, you can live in Alabama. You don't have to move to one of these cities. A lot of the filming now is done in other states. I
mhm,
live in West Virginia. I film a lot more now than I did when I was in California because in the last few years, like I said, a couple of years, I've been filming movies with Dean. They're mostly starring Dean Cain and myself. Dean Cain was Superman on the
Yep.
TV show.
Mhm.
So I've been doing a lot of movies with Dean. Dean and I have been doing movie after movie after movie with this JC Films company. And with that, also Kevin Sorbo's been in them, Eddie McClintock. Um, different actors, from different
Mhm.
Richard Grieco, who was Booker on the TV show Booker, and he was on 21 Jump Street. He and I are about to go
Mhm.
do a movie down in Florida together in a couple months.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm living in West Virginia. Who'd have thunk? I'm living in the middle of the mountains. I mean, I am literally surrounded by mountains. I'm in the mountains and I'm working. So I know I've worked in the past, and so that's different. But a lot of the actors that they've been putting in the movies are people who live local.
Mhm.
So sometimes you can find film companies in your state and in
Mhm.
your community that are filming things that you can start working in, and at least to get a line. If you can get a line, it gives you something to present to an agent to say, "Hey, I'm actually doing this.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm not union yet, but you know, I've got I've got a little bit of work behind me. I've got enough to make myself a film reel, and that's what you need to build up is a acting film reel. Or
Mhm.
if you're local and you have local theater is great. Doing situation comedies, it's just like doing theater. And I learned that from Tony Danza because my very first sitcom I ever worked on was Who's the Boss? And
Mhm.
Tony Danza came up to me so sweet and so polite. And he said, "It's your first sitcom?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Have you done any theater?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Okay, this is exactly like doing theater, except you got cameras." He said,
Mhm.
"So just hit your mark." And he said, "Don't miss your mark on the stage where you need to, step." And he said, "That camera is going to get you from here to here. That's your close up. So, see, don't be doing this." He said, "or you'll be out of screen." He said, "That camera over there," he said, "that's getting the two of us in a two shot." He said, "And that camera over there," he said, "that's getting the whole room, the whole scenario." He said, "And that camera over there, that's getting my close up. So if you do this, you're going to be blocking me." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay." So, he taught me that about cameras and about the stage. So I think it's if you learn, to act on a stage in the theater, it's great. It's great. If you're funny, get out and tell some jokes.
Mhm.
Like if you're a musician, get up and play a song or
Mhm.
or play the piano or the guitar, whatever it is you do that makes you unique. Film yourself
Mhm.
because these are things that can help you. One hand leads to the other. Tia, my friend Tia, she wanted to be a singer and she wound up getting all this acting roles, and now she's gone back to singing and she's won
Mhm.
2 Grammy Awards
Mhm.
and
Nice.
she's been
Mhm.
nominated a few times. But that's what she wanted to do in the beginning, but it didn't work out that way. The acting things came along. So sometimes, as long as you're in the arena
Mhm.
of the entertainment business, it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, Julie, again, yeah, thank you so very much for the time. I'm gonna ask you one more quick question, and then I'll let you go. And everybody, again, Thursday, February 13th, she's gonna be at the Funny Farm Comedy Club here in downtown Youngstown. So, Julie, you mentioned obviously your stand-up career is consistently ongoing, and you mentioned doing some acting work with Dean Cain's company. Any other sort of projects, sort of right on in the short term that you're involved with that you like to plug?
Um, no, not really.
Okay,
Just the JC
fair enough.
the JC the JC Films channel, it's JC Films Plus channel, and it's a free channel, and that's what a lot of the stuff that I've been doing lately is airing on. I'm
Mhm.
in this funny little movie called Not a Clue, and I had a Christmas movie out called Hank's Christmas Wish, which was cute. And then the one I'm supposed to be doing with Richard Grieco, up and coming, that one's going to be called When Angels Fall, and that's a little comedy. So I'm just doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I'm just looking forward to being there because we're for that show at the Funny Farm, it's also a fundraiser for
Mhm,
autism. I don't know
mhm.
if you have all that information.
Yeah,
So
from yep, from Voices for Autism, yeah, with Scott runs that, the guy that's putting on the show. Yes, yes.
yes. So I'm hoping that people come out because that's what we're doing this for. It's not just not like a regular show at a comedy club. It's for a purpose.
Mhm,
And so it's to help raise money for that. And I feel really, really blessed that I get to be a part of that, and
mhm.
then get to actually help do something that's good. And I'm hoping that people come out and come see me make fun of Playboy because I- it's not a lot you can say. No, I'm not a family-oriented comedian. Just so you know,
Mhm.
don't bring your kids.
Yeah,
It's
right, right.
Do not bring your kids. It needs to be definitely, people of age coming to my show, and but I don't cuss through my act or anything like that. But the innuendo of what I talk about,
Sure.
is not appropriate for children. I talk about the hooters, the cooter, and the pooter. The fact that I showed it when I was very young. That's how I landed my feet in Los Angeles too. Because I became a Playboy bunny.
Mhm,
But so that's it. So just don't bring your kids.
mhm.
And don't please. I'm not dirty, dirty, but I'm not completely clean. In other words, I don't cuss because I don't like to cuss anyway. Um, and but I do make fun of my Playboy past and that type of thing. So I'm doing, I think, two
Mhm,
shows that night. So if you can't come to an early show, come to a late show. Or
mhm.
if you got kids and come to an early show and and be home in time to let the babysitter go for the nighttime show. It's a Thursday night. I realize it's a work night. So if you can come, please do, because I'm looking forward to being there. I haven't been to Youngstown. I have not. Boom Boom Mancini's from Youngstown, right?
Mhm. Yep,
And
yep.
Boom Boom Ray used to be in my comedy class at the Improv when I
Oh,
first
wow.
started out. He was in my class, so I did a lot of scenes with him back there. And then I'll tell you a funny story about him because y'all are in Youngstown. So I'm
Yeah, for
really
sure.
Ray he used to start out doing these situation comedy scenes, and we're supposed to be doing, say, an argument scene, and Ray would start going, yeah, and then this, and then that, and then it's like he would act with his hands so much, like he was boxing when he would get into an argument scene on stage, that everybody in our whole class would start stomping their feet, going boom, 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 boom. What a good dude. So he's the only person I know that's actually from that town. And what a good guy. That guy, I used to go to the VA hospital and we used to serve Christmas dinners and Thanksgiving dinners, for holidays. And we used to
Mhm,
go and just volunteer because my dad was a vet. So I always try to go and do anything with the veterans. I've even been to Afghanistan and toured Afghanistan as a stand-up comedian. I love the
mhm,
vets. And Ray used to be in there with his whole family every every holiday. Ray would be at the VA in Los Angeles serving dinners
mhm.
and with his whole family. They would serve for the vets. Much respect, man. Like, what a good dude. What a good dude. And he'd be the only other celebrity I would see there whenever I was there. It was just usually, you know,
I gotcha.
and I thought, wow, man, much respect. So
He's a
much
very
respect.
He's a very nice guy, and he's very beloved in these parts, obviously, in Youngstown. He's a hometown hero here, and he actually filmed his at the studio where I'm doing this from, he had a podcast where he's got it going again, but, the initial run of it, he actually filmed here. So, yeah, we have a connection to him as well too. So, yeah, he's a great guy. I would assume if he's gonna be in town, you might definitely see him down at that show. So,
Oh, I
fingers
hope
crossed, I would
so.
say,
I
if he's
love Ray.
mhm.
I love Ray. Ray's a good dude. Oh, well, that
So
would be awesome. What
we'll
a good
tag him.
guy.
I'll clip that story about him and use it as one of the clips, and we'll definitely tag him in it. So he's certainly aware that if he's not aware you're coming, he's going to be after this too. So
Love
that's
it.
awesome. But Julie, hey, thank you so very much. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you. Yeah, once again, folks, everybody, Thursday, February 13th at the Funny Farm Comedy Club. Proceeds of it benefit Voices for Autism. So yeah, come see the original Funny Bunny, Julie McCullough, on February 13th. Julie, thank you so very much for your time, and we'll catch you at the show.
Thanks so much, y'all. I can't wait to be there. And thanks so much for having me on the show and advertising it.